What is up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another live stream. My name's Lewis, also known as MrCameraJunkie. Welcome back, crew members, to episode number 50. That is 50 consecutive live streams on Saturday nights. So welcome once again to Club Camera Junkie, where I remind you to upgrade your skills before your gear. Now, today we're going to be talking about this new player on the cinema camera scene, which is DJI. Now, DJI has always been known for drones. They even came out with the drone recently, the new Mavic Pro 3, which is such a fully functional, fully powered, small light drone that it almost looks like it's gonna cannibalize their Inspire series, which is their more cinematic type of drone. But we're not even going to talk about that today. Today we're going to be talking about the new Ronin Cinema 4D, which is, not only is it a new cinema camera, it is a new type of camera altogether, where I really see this being kind of like the future of run and gun cinematography, especially with all the features that is packed into this system. On top of that, you actually have this like one of the major concerns, which was what type of lenses can you actually adapt to it, and when it comes to using heavier cinema type lenses on a cinema type camera, how will this camera handle it? And I think a lot of those worries were put aside with Josh Yo's behind the scene video of how he made his type of commercial / endorsement with DJI. Because for those of you who actually follow Josh Yo like I do, you would know that he was working hand in hand with DJI for a while. He was the first one, and maybe even the only one, to get his hands on that LiDAR detection system before it was even mounted on any cinema. Oh. Hey buddy, somebody's excited about the camera too. That's Aiden, as always. For those of you who don't know, the boss man is awake and playing in the house. But getting back to it, that the one concern was how would this handle like big heavy lenses, and with Josh Yo's video we know that that's not even an issue. And Josh Yo was kind of like the one that was working with DJI, kind of fine-tuning the LiDAR system before it was even put on any type of camera. So with that being said, I really do think that Josh had a lot to do with the making of this camera. And that's why, you know, for those of you, like I said before, who follow Josh, know his his mindset when it comes to really taking the gear and pushing it to the limits. Um, there was an event a couple of years ago called Camera Camp. It was hosted by Sony. So it was Sony's Camera Camp, and they took a bunch of different creators from this platform and just like took them to the mountains in Montana and just gave them like free access to all the gear that they could ever imagine to create content while they were there. They were introducing a lot of the new features of their cameras or their new cameras at that moment, but then they also got a lot of feedback from the content creators on this platform on how to move forward. And in that series, Josh took one of Sony's most expensive telephoto lenses, which I believe the front element itself was like $15,000 just for the piece of glass that sat at the front if it needed to be repaired. So he put that on a Ronin gimbal and started, taking shots with this telephoto lens and a Sony camera while he was riding around on his one wheel. And he's got some amazing parallax shots that are just incredible, like super cinematic, just awesome. So he's always been, like I said, known to push the limits on all the gear, and that's when I realized that he was already pushing the limits of this gimbal and the one that they put onto this Ronin 4D, that it's definitely gonna have the capacity to hold up and use the vintage lenses, cinema lenses, and things like that onto this system and really have almost like a run and gun one person type of system. Now, even though I'm saying that it's one person, Josh also recently released a video saying where he believes that you need more than one person to run this system. But I also think that there was a little bias in that for the simple reason that he was the one that was trying to act in his video while using the camera as like the director. So there was always the difference of him actually composing the shot as being the art director, or the director of photography, and also being the talent on camera as well. So while you're on camera, you can't see how the shot is being framed or if you like the way that it looks. So that will constantly put a little damper in anyone's type of workflow, especially when you are the talent. So with that being said, like I said, I think it's a really good system for someone who is looking to create, content by themselves, not only for cinematic, but also kind of like one-on-one run and gun, because this thing also has DJI's like famous subject tracking. So you're talking about a LiDAR detection autofocus system that you can apply vintage cinema lenses to, that is sitting on a gimbal, and it can track you and follow you while you're doing anything in wherever you're at. So whether you're in your studio or you're literally running and gunning, this camera has a lot to offer. And the last thing that I would have to say is, like when it comes to the price, a lot of people were saying like this is very steep when it comes to being, I believe, a $10,000 system. Now, last I checked, the cheapest red cinema camera is about $15,000, and that's just a little block that comes with absolutely nothing. That is just base, bare bones, but it moves you up into the cinema line. And this being into that realm and being full frame, I think DJI put one of their best foot forward. And even though this is a design that could be a little off-putting to people the first time they see it, I think it's very easily adaptable once you see the potential that this system has. I'm not the biggest fan myself of gimbals, and that has a lot to do with it being another piece of gear that you have to take with you. But if it's all in one and you can just use the gimbal when you want it and when you don't, and you're also talking about much bigger batteries that can actually give you a much longer runtime, I really think that this could be the future of a lot of cinematography, especially, use case scenarios. Like, movies are not only shot on one type of camera, but the way that Josh demonstrated the ability to mount this on a car, uh, using it upside down to get the best action. There's so much possibility in this system that I see this is probably going to take off fairly well for DJI, and I wish them the best, because the one thing that most people would say would be the image quality, and from what I can see, that's not an issue, especially with all the codecs and all the, like, being able to shoot raw um, and ProRes right out of the box, man. Big ups to DJI. So I said my piece. Before I continue, I'm gonna go see what's up in chat, see if there's any questions so that we can keep going. All right, Kevin stopped by, but he said he's gonna catch the replay, and we have JP in the house. How you doing, sir? Welcome. He's saying let's go. Scott Rogers, how are you doing, sir? Jim Mundi as well, saying good evening to all. Says congrats on 50 live streams, right? 50 live streams, man. I would have never thought, which means that in 2 weeks, that makes a year, right? So I'm really getting excited for 52 week live stream, because it really is like full circle. Like I said, I would have never thought that when I started live streaming and did 30 days of live streaming, that it would just become such a huge part of me and my weekly routine, that it's now like 50 weeks consecutive. And I thank all of you for hanging out with me here, because it means the world to me to have you guys come back. Because like it sounds crazy, right? I guess it sounds crazy to me because I wasn't expecting it, but it's already like, I am so grateful for you guys making me part of your Saturday evening routine as well. That I know that the same way that when my, like the creators that I've been following for a long time, when they miss a live stream, it kind of throws a monkey wrench in my system. So I hope you guys know that you guys mean so much to me, that's why I strive to continue to be here week in, week out, to be here for you guys, the camera junkies. It's like, you guys make it worth it. And here's another one, Sammy Superstar. Once again, Sammy, happy birthday. I believe you turned 17. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the age that you just turned. Congratulations and happy birthday. Saying what's up. Hey, Rob is in the house saying howdy, sir. I think the time change is gonna help, Rob out now on the West Coast. Me, I'm not going to lie, I was tired all week with this time change. It really messed me up. I still proof enough, right? let me get some hydration here. Okay. Because I'm a bit surprised. Maxon did not go after Ronin for the name infringement. Maxon made Cinema 4D way before Ronin used the name. Well, I think the way that they are able to like loophole it is that the entire name is the Ronin Cinema 4D. So I guess if it was Cinema 4D by itself, but I'm not really sure what Maxim is right now. Can't remember, but it says different products, but still. Exactly. What could it do? It could only boast their sales, because it's not like it's gonna take away from their from like their demographic, from their target audience. So Paul Duncan, the Paul Duncan's in the house saying evening to the family. He goes, I think I was 17 once. Has it been that long, Paul? Come on, man. But actually, when you think about it, if I start thinking about me at 17, it's like, wow, that's 23 years ago. I'm a complete adult that can drink, different from the person that I was when I was 17. So imagine that. Dr. Seb's in the house. Well, thank you for stopping by to say hi. I appreciate it. Well, I don't know if you guys have any questions or anything about this camera. Um, like I said, I can just rant about it. Let's go check it out so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. This has been dubbed the chicken camera. Okay. Oh, okay. That's not what we're supposed to be seeing. That's just me checking. Okay, there we go. Where did that go? There we go. All right. This is the Ronin 4D. It's been called the chicken camera, like I said, because of the simple fact that it actually has like a oscillating chicken head or neck, so to speak, as the fourth axis of stabilization on the lens itself. Now, if you can see the mouse where I have it right here, this top part here, this is what's called the LiDAR detection or autofocus detection system. It's basically the same thing that Apple has been claiming on their phones to be carrying for like the last couple generations, which is a like light emitting like sub-frequency or kind of like a sonar that it emits these I guess ultraviolet light. I'm not sure exactly which one it is, but just like these light photons that are just graphing the entire environment, and through that they're able to kind of like mask the the depth of field through this detection. Now, because this is being done through this LiDAR, like this light radar, the LiDAR, you can actually match it to any lens at all. So that's what is putting this kind of like one leg up when it comes to using vintage lenses. Like, for example, love this lens. This is a Nikkor. Oh, let's see if it'll focus. This is the 50mm f1.4. This is like such an amazing lens. Now it's a 70-year-old lens. No, is it? I think it was 70 years old, something like that. 70-year-old lens. The picture quality on this is like superb. I matched it up with my sharpest Sony lens, which is my 55mm f1.8, and I have a video on the channel here where you can compare the two, and it's really hard for you to tell the difference, especially under like controlled lighting. But the fact that you can modify an old lens like this that gives you a very particular look, a very particular like colors profile, because just of the way that these lenses were built in those times, you can still apply that to this camera here, put a focus ring, and still have a gimbal fully autofocus or manual focus, like if you want to pull the focus because it's a cinema camera. But the fact that this LiDAR allows you to kind of have autofocus on any type of lens, it pretty much is like next level amazing, right? The fact that they've have high quality lenses that you can put onto the system is one thing, but also the fact that just like most cinema cameras, it still gives you the ability to change the mounting system on the front from the standard Ronin, or I'm not sure exactly what the mount of this camera is called, but you can put a Sony E mount with native autofocus that works. Or you can use Canon, that I believe you can also have the autofocus that works. That is like next level when it comes to cinema cameras. Well, something like this, especially for the price, because like I mentioned before, anything like just entry level into cinematic or into cinema cameras, you're looking at like $16,000 entry level. For you to get something around this price, you're going to be looking at a used unit that's already a little bit older and doesn't have the latest and greatest technology. And like I said, to have a cinema camera that you can put like on a park bench, turn on, and it follow you. Like, let's say you're just doing talking head stuff and just have it follow you, like if it was an iPhone on an Osmo 5 or an OM5. It's the same company, by the way, but it goes to show you that that same tracking is what you can rely on. And this company, DJI, is pretty much well known already. So let's check out the specs. It seems to be pretty heavy as well, though, but most cinema cameras are. 35mm full frame CMOS imaging sensor, DX mount, I guess that's what they're calling it. It supports DL, M, and E mount. This thing is really, it really is awesome. And you know, to add a little bit onto that, I saw a video, I think it was today or yesterday. Peter Lindgren, he did it with Leah, and he compared the Sony S7, no, the Sony A7S3 versus this Ronin, as far as like the image that you get. And you know, now that we're scratching the surface right now with the majority of these cameras being 10-bit color bit depth, man, I'll tell you the truth, there's so much flexibility that with that type of footage in post, that if you get it halfway decent in the camera, you're gonna be able to get something fairly well coming out of the end, you know. But when it comes to everything, a term that we use is garbage in, garbage out, you know, like in the computer world. So the same has to do with this. If you're not able to utilize this correctly, the camera is not going to do the work for you. Now, the work that this camera will do for you is stabilize the hell out of your footage. And that's where it really comes into, because when you compare this camera by itself, fully tricked out, fully modded out, right? And after you fully mod it out, you turn on that gimbal to get that extra stabilization, it is still so much smaller than other rigs from this same company to do similar things. For example, the previous Ronin gimbal with its cage was enormous. It was so heavy that it also required you to wear a harness on your back with like 2 hooks to clip onto the cage, just so that it can hold the weight on your back while you just held onto this cage. That entire kit is just about the same amount of weight as this camera by itself, yet this allows you to literally hold it with 2 hands and squeeze that camera pretty much anywhere that you could squeeze a package this small, comparative to something that the cage itself is going to be so much bigger. So that's where I really tip my hat off to DJI. You know, if this is the type of camera that you're gonna be using, if you're already using the Ronin series, this is kind of like a no-brainer to you, because this is gonna make so many things that much more easier, especially the fact of having to rebalance gimbals, which is all time consumption, and the one thing that we can never get back is our time. All right, give me 1 second. What's going on, Nathan? You okay? Just checking in on the boss. All right, so let's go check back in on the chat. Let's see where we're at here. Paul Duncan says 17 was 49 years ago, and that was the early 70s. Things were kind of cloudy. Cloudy is a good way of putting it, right? The 70s were kind of cloudy. All the memories, very, very cloudy. Says 4D. Is that virtual reality? No, 4 dimension of axis stabilization. So, kind of like in mathematics, you had the x, y, and then the z was the third axis or axes, however you decide to put it. Well, the axis that you have in the gimbal, they actually added a fourth one, which is the up and down stabilization. So you had side to side, like rolling, up and down, right, as far as like tilt, and now also up and down as far as stabilization. So it's funny because this camera is it doesn't replace good form, right? You can still benefit from having good form when shooting video footage. So this doesn't take away from you having to learn how to ninja walk, right? And for those of you who don't know what that is, a ninja walk is a film term that we use when you crouch down and you start placing one foot over the other and try to roll your footsteps as best as possible so that you don't have any jarring motion while you're stepping step to step, so that you kind of just keep like a floating motion as you're using that to get the most stable footage that you possibly can out of your body, and then on top of that, you'll be able to fix kind of like the little bit of jitters that are left in post-production. With this, I saw my man Peter running full speed, like in a forest with like changing terrain, and as he's jostling this camera up and down, the head is just like chicken head stabilization. The funny thing is that was like a meme that was running around the photography and cinematography world, where everyone's talking about like camera stabilization, and then they got this video of a chicken and a guy holding the chicken, and the chicken's head is here, and he'll move the body wherever, and the head of the chicken stays fixed in like space and time, just right there, right? So it's very interesting because a lot of birds have the ability to do this. A lot of like hawks and eagles have the ability to just like keep their head like focused while they're hunting, but as the wind and the environment changes, their body will adapt to it, but their head will stay fixed in that spot, and it's pretty interesting. So I believe they took that concept that was a kind of like a joke that was running around, through Instagram and everything that you can find as far as photography goes, and they decided to say like, hey, you know what, we should try to implement that, and that's what this camera kind of does. This camera has that little tilting aspect of it. Let's see where we're at. Yeah. But it works, which is the most important thing. The most important thing that I think about all of this is that, see, this is the fourth axis stabilization, Rob. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and now 4, which is 4 is actually these two here, like the hinge, and it's basically like they just added a jib. They just added a jib on the end of, or they put a gimbal on the end of a jib. And the one thing that, this is just my idea, because a lot of people were really thinking, they were like, oh, I don't know if I'd be able to put a heavy cinema lens on there, which I do understand. I'm not sure if they have the PL mount, which is the traditional cinema camera, and there's some monster lenses in the cinema world that cost over $100,000 that are just monster cinema lenses, and they're still have a PL mount. So no matter how big and long they are, they're still dealing with this mount, and they have different ways to alleviate all of that extra weight. That I feel that if you were an owner of this camera, if this was something that you have in your system, right, this is part of your workflow, and you needed to adapt the PL mount lens, even if it's manual, not only does this have the LiDAR system that you could do it, but I think that it should not be that hard. And this is just me, this is just my idea, that the same way that you would mount rail systems onto other cameras to make them more cinema-like, you know, like a build out, that you would be able to add a couple of rail bars at the bottom, 19 inches, that come off of the bottom, and build a system to stabilize these huge cinema lenses and put them in front of this sensor. Shouldn't be that hard. Because when you're dealing with that size of a lens, we're not talking about it being on a gimbal. But the one thing that people also say is, how would I invest in this and not be able to utilize it to its max like a cinema camera, which is where I think it's a defeatist mentality. I think like when you're putting limitations on yourself, I'm like, that's all you're doing. Obviously, this has some of the strongest motors in the industry to carry the lenses that it can carry natively. But then on top of that, look what we're talking about, that LiDAR focusing. This thing is next level. That's a whole nother feature, right? The fact that you can have someone who, for example, let's just say you needed help with a shot and you're the director. You can have this entire system right here in your hands. You have full control of the recording, the focus pulling, everything, and it's all done remotely. Now, on top of it being done remotely, what you could also do is just hand off the camera to a complete novice, someone who doesn't know cinematography, right? And literally hand him the camera and be like, stand here, and like through like a headset, just give him basic commands: move forward, move back, crouch down, move to the right. And you, with this system off to the side, could control all of the cinematography and direct your movie. You can do way more than just direct your movie. That's what I'm saying. Like on top of that, you know, like let's say you were doing a client job, you can give them a full-fledged high definition monitor just to watch it. But if you wanted to take control, that you could take the gears off of the camera. So for those of you who don't know, let's kind of bring this back. These handles that are built into the side of this camera, I don't think they showed it there. Well, these handles here are the same handles that are built into the side of this camera itself. Let's see if we can bring some images from the internet. Yeah, so my thumbnail is a good picture. This one, if you can see it here. Let me move this over there. Boop. Okay, you're not letting me. Okay, but you see these handles are the same ones. So the same type of controls, the same exact controls that you would have on the camera if you were using it, you'd be able to do that right through the controller completely wirelessly. Look at this. Man, that's what I was trying to show you before. Look, top handle, hand grip, both sides, bright monitor. All of this is included in this kit, which when it comes to cinema cameras, I'll tell you the truth, like all of these things end up being add-ons to your kit. So having a wireless focus system could cost you another $1,000 easy. Having a wireless transmission system, bang. So you're taking a relative cinema camera, and I'm comparing it to the Reds and stuff like that. Look at this. This is just awesome. Like, and that's what I say, like, if it's someone like me, and I'm just putting this out there, if you're like anything like me, that you take initiative in doing things yourself, this camera can let you do so much that it's I don't see I see endless possibilities with this. That's basically my thought on that. Look, that's just like a vintage lens. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's me being a vintage lens junkie as well, but I don't think I'm the only one. But that's where I really see this system excelling, and once again, my thought, I think DJI knocked it out of the park here. Let's see. Look at this. And it's all built in. So, a lot of times as well, when you would add something like a focus pulling system or anything like that, that's going to totally compromise the gimbal as well. Unless you bought the specific one that's designed for the gimbal. But even those tend to be bulky and throw off like the center of gravity when it comes to the time that you have to take to rebalance the gimbal to get the shots that you want. I'm gonna go back to it. I think time is our most precious commodity, is the one thing that we cannot get back. Once it's gone, it's gone. It's why I'm motivated to do so much with my everyday. And for that reason is why I think that the amount of time that you'd be able to save with this system is where people don't yet realize the full value of this system. And I tell you the truth, most of the time for me, if it's something that can save me time, you have me sold. Yep. And for example, Ecamm. I love Ecamm because it saves me so much time. Oh man, like today with the time change and everything, like I was so far behind on setting up even this live stream. I knew that this is what I wanted to talk about by the time that I got in here, got things going. And by the time that I was like, okay, I'm done, I'm ready for the live stream, I look up and it's like 5 minutes until showtime. So it goes to show you, usually I have a little bit more time to get myself ready. I, listen to some comedy, like I've mentioned before, to kind of just get my head in a fun, like mood before I go live. And I wasn't even able to do that. But like I always say, this is the best part of my week, so once again, thank you for hanging out. Says Paul, you're still young. 70 is the new 40s, says Dr. Sev. I'm going back to 720p. I'm tired of stressing over how I look. Well, you can do that. Like 720p is gonna be soft, but this is a whole nother thing, Aaron, just so that you know, these cameras have fine-tuned features. So even if you're in 4K, if you're at 1080p or 720p, the picture profiles, right, not the picture profiles, the creative styles and these Sony cameras, right, because the picture profiles is like the S Cinetone and like S log, hybrid log gamma, all that is picture profiles. Like the A6100 does not have S log, does not have S Cinetone. It doesn't have picture profiles. It has creative styles, which is like vivid and like black and white, so on and so forth. And right now I have mine on standard, but I also have I have the saturation up one, the contrast up one, and sharpness -1, because these digital cameras tend to give like an extra digital sharpness that's not like the nicest when it comes to being on camera, or the moire issues, so on and so forth. So with that being said, you can go ahead and buy a pro mist filter, which is fine, right? To each his own. Or you can go and learn your camera just a little bit more, go into the settings, reduce the sharpness that the camera is literally outputting. And even though my signal, that's usually in 4K, but today I kind of changed the settings and I put like low latency to have the chat be a little bit faster, which reminded me that the reason why it wasn't there is so that you can actually shoot out 4K. So today we're at 1440, 2.5K. But it should still look good. Like I said, my camera settings are set down to -1 when it comes to the sharpness, so that there's not like extra details that look like the moire, so on and so forth, when it comes to my salt and pepper, my shirts, or my beard. So, but like I said, 720 should help, but even if you're at 720, you might want to take down the sharpness just a bit to get a little bit of a softer image. Tends to be more pleasing. Alright, so Paul is saying hi to Dr. Sev. Mario's in the house saying hello. Rob says, I'm not handing any of my cameras to a novice. Whoops, I dropped it. LOL. Well, you know what I mean. Like, I don't really mean a complete novice, but let's say you have someone who doesn't know how to get the exact shot, can hold the camera because they're learning, but doesn't know how to focus pull at the same time. These are all options that are available to you using a system like this. Andrew Hoyle's in the house saying, what's up, camera junkies? How you doing, sir? It says that thing is badass, but man, that thing's big money too. But it just really depends, because I believe if you wanted to just buy the camera body itself, like core, so, and this is what I say, like, oh, who's gonna buy the core? Maybe someone who had one that was dropped, Rob, right? No, but let's just say you have an accident with the camera, right? Let's say it was on a drone or anything, and you have all the peripherals except now you need the camera body. I believe it's going for like 7,000 for the core body, like, you know, the 4D, the sensor, basically like the core build. And then with everything else added to it is $10,000. That's what I'm saying. This thing basically has a like Atomos Ninja type size screen on the top for viewing with like 115 nits or 1500 nit brightness, meaning you can see it in sunlight. All the features, all the controls, all the wireless, all the everything on it, and you're at 10,000. The Atomos Ninja, I believe, cost like close to $1,000 by itself. And the new version that they're coming out with, all of this is touchscreen. It's integrated with the system, so you're gonna be direct, like dealing directly with the file formats within the camera. It's just like, I'm not saying that this is perfect, right? I'm saying this is a really, really good first step for DJI. Like, and if they can get this down, I won't be surprised that DJI might even come out with a more, how can I put this, more influencer type camera. You know, if Sigma is trying to put out the world's smallest full frame camera, and it's really not that good, you know, I don't know if you guys heard of it at all. I believe it's called the FP. Could be wrong. But it's this small little block camera that's heard that it might be like a crash camera for footage, you know, in Hollywood, something where you can stick somewhere. I'm so sorry, excuse me. Let's hydrate. Like a crash cam where you can put it just anywhere, literally, to get footage off of it before it burns up or blows up inside of a vehicle, inside of a like Hollywood blockbuster movie. I understand, but that actually hasn't been implemented. And just putting it out there, if Sigma can come out with a full frame, you know, photography camera that isn't really good, the fact that DJI has already got a working camera Cinema, yeah, but the sensor, a lot of the technology, all of that is already coming into play. If they're taking that technology and then just kind of bringing it down to a camera that has this same type of ability, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be surprised they could make a pretty good product, and now you can have a completely new 21st century company, one of the new boys on the block, really competing in the camera market, which is only better for us, right? Like I said, when Canon comes out with the new camera with all the new features, like the new R3 that they're coming out with, the one who's gonna benefit the most is Sony users, right? And Nikon users, because for these companies to keep up, they're gonna have to leapfrog it. So that means you're up next, right? It's your turn, so to speak, in this game to get the latest and greatest, because it was the Canon R5 that came out with 8K, and then it was the Sony Alpha 1. Now I believe it's the Canon R3. Excuse me. And soon Sony's gonna be coming out with something else. Like, well, they just came out with the A7S4, which we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. Really interesting, the technology that's built into that camera. But speaking of that, I heard that there should be 3 new cameras coming out from Sony in 2022, which is very interesting because they dropped 4 this year, and they were all really good. I can't say like all the cameras that Sony came out with this year turned out to be really good. So if I am correct, I believe the FX3, the ZVE10, the Alpha 1, and the A7S4. I mean, the A7 IV. So because I believe A7S3 was last year. So, if my mind serves me right, I believe those are the 4 cameras that dropped this year. Let's see what happens next year. A lot of people are talking about this, and I'm just throwing this in there, a little extra 2 cents, right? Everyone's talking about APS-C, like where can they go from here, so on and so forth. I'm mentioning this again. The next level of APS-C cameras are going to be stacked sensors. Stacked sensors like you have on some of the high frame rate cameras. That technology was implemented in the Sony ZV-1, and because of it, there's like noticeably better performance when it comes to rolling shutter, even though it's a 1-inch sensor compared to APS-C or full frame. On top of that, we're mostly talking about APS-C. Speaking into the APS-C realm, we haven't seen anything with sensor readouts like a stacked sensor. So right now, with the sensor that we have, like on the Sony A6100, right? It's a 24 megapixel sensor, which I'm not even going to get into that conversation because that's a whole nother rabbit hole when we start talking about actual megapixels. But regardless, the sensor on this camera right now has the ability to record at 120 frames right now. And when I shoot at 120 frames, slow motion, 250, 1/250th second on the shutter, which is using the reciprocal rule, doing it that way, I get amazing footage out of this camera. If this was a stacked APS-C sensor, let's just say that effectively we can double that, and you can have a camera that could be giving you 120 frames in 4K and maybe 240 frames in 1080 HD, which would be killer, which would be amazing to get that type of footage out of an APS-C camera. And I reiterate, most cinema cameras from back in the day were Super 35, which is the same as an APS-C. So it's not like you can't get cinematic, like type of footage out of a smaller sensor or a smaller film set being 35 or super 35 millimeter comparative to full frame. Now, there is a difference when it comes to the readouts and the file that you're dealing with at the end of the day, but it's not like you cannot apply a great cinema lens, that a lot of them are also designed for super 35. You know, not all the cinema lenses were designed for full frame, because that's not how they were used in the first place. So let's go back to the chat. Sly's in the house saying happy Saturday. How are you? He says, yes, beauty mode for the win. That's not beauty mode. That's -1 on the sharpness. That's learning how to do it. Ken, the content coach, just hit record. How you doing? Saying, hey, Lewis. Simply Obs. How you doing, Aubrey? Welcome to the live stream. So glad to have you here. That's super cool. Guys, this week has been fun, but I think that the time change is really kicking my butt. Usually these things run for 2 hours, but now that I'm really noticing it, like, I'm yawning over here because of the fact that I think that this is usually the time where it would normally be like around 1 o'clock in the morning. Even though we're like, we say we gain an hour or something like that, man, I feel like that was lost in my book because I'm exhausted. I've been yawning here. So I appreciate all of you guys hanging out. We're gonna call it short this week. Hopefully next week my body's more accustomed and I should have things rocking and rolling back to the, you know, like back to normal. But as of right now, I need some rest. It says, yeah, almost midnight. Aubrey, listen to me. Aubrey, I can barely speak right now. I usually run till 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, and that's normal. Like a 2-hour live stream is kind of my average. So me doing 1 hour is literally like cutting this show in half. But my battery needs recharging. So I thank all of you guys, as always, for taking the time, for coming out here and hanging out with me. It is your most precious commodity, our time, and I always appreciate you guys spending it here with me. But with that being said, I need to get some rest. There's a lot to do tomorrow and this following week. There's a lot of things to be coming around and a lot of things that I have to set up, because I'm going to try to do something a little extra for week 52. So, as always, guys, take care of yourselves. Have a great and amazing week, because we're going to be doing it all over again. Next weekend, same time, same place. You will find me here with all of you hanging out and talking about something else next week. I'm not even sure, but I'm also going to try to stay in contact through the community tab with everyone to see about what we can do. Actually, I have a quick question of you for those of you who are still here. Let's go back to the computer. Okay, and I'm going to change this. And I have a question for you. This is Canva. This is how I've been making the majority of my my thumbnails, as you can see. Which one do you think is more attractive? With the, you know, like with the text or without? So if you guys can help me out before we close out, what do you think? Number 1 or number 2 when it comes to these images as far as thumbnails? Or maybe you have an entirely different idea of what you think I can do. I'm trying to really get as much feedback as I possibly can with my thumbnails. I'm trying to go in a different way to try to see if we can get, you know, some more like movement through the thumbnails. I mentioned it to you guys last week that Nick took the time to help me out with some of the thumbnails, so I'm trying to implement these changes. I did it for this week's video. For those of you who didn't see it, I put out a video on cleaning your lenses, and I used a different thumbnail that I would traditionally use on my channel. And I could honestly tell you, even if like right now on the analytics, I think it's trending like the same. The biggest difference was the response in the comments. The people who actually watched my videos were watching it and were like, oh, absolutely love the thumbnail, like chef's kiss on the thumbnail and all this stuff, which is like, that's super cool. So the reaction that I got was so positive on the thumbnail change. I'm once again going to you guys, the camera junkies, to see what you guys think about these thumbnails, because the thumbnails, to be extremely clear, it's only designed to get you to, first of all, read the title of the video. There's some thumbnails that are, that will get you to click right away, but what I'm trying to do is get you to at least notice it and read the title. So in combination, the picture and the title should be the hook to get you to click into my video. So let's see what you guys says. Okay, it looks like everyone's saying with text. Number one, with text. Okay, so I appreciate that. I'm gonna see, because I'm also trying to learn the community tab. I'm gonna try to make a poll to do the same thing, to see with text, without, or to see if maybe I come up with another idea. This video should be out on Wednesday, which is another big ups to me. That's one of the best things that I was able to do in this past week, which I'm very proud of. I was able to get a week ahead on my videos. So let me go back to this. What I was able to do was I put out a video last week or the week prior with a video already in the can. So I put out a video this week. I already have one for next week, and I'm already working on the video for the week after that. So I'm just trying to stay ahead of the curve as much as possible. Once again, big shout outs to Tom Buck, because he's a huge inspiration on being ahead when it comes to this platform, and it makes it a lot easier, because I think instead of you having like the pressure of having to create a video, like by a timely manner, and then maybe it being something that deters you from being more creative, as soon as I have one in the can, is like, I'm not worried. Like, I already know something's coming out on Wednesday, and all I have to worry about is, I actually, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I already have the video that not only that's coming out next Wednesday, but I have the video that's gonna come out in the Wednesday after that, and it's already shot. I'm just putting like the final bells and whistles to then have it uploaded and have it just sitting there. So I have until Wednesday to continue the trend of being a week ahead and doing my damnedest, my hardest, to try to keep that trend. And to tell you guys the truth, the same way that this live stream has reached 50 weeks, and is like, the fact that it has reached 50 weeks is motivation enough to make it 51, to make it 52, and to keep it going, to see how long I can keep this going without fail. Because it's not like it's been easy. There's been a lot of days where it's been really hard to make it to the live stream, but the fact that I've made the effort, no matter what, to be here, no matter what, it means a lot to me. That's like a personal achievement. So I'm thinking that this is starting to fall into that same type of category, that staying a week ahead of my content is like a personal achievement that I guess I wasn't even thinking about before. And now that I've achieved, I so badly want to keep it that way, and keep it at least a week ahead, and try to get my closest to 2 until I reach 2 weeks ahead, and just keep staying ahead of my content, which is really gonna make things, I think, a lot more fun for me. So with that being said, I will once again say bye to everyone. Oh, I see some new people who stopped in as well. It says okay, we all agreed on the text. Aubrey says well done, thank you. And Devin is in the house saying hello, and so is Brian. Guys, I'm heading out right now. Thanks for stopping by. but I'm really tired this week. I appreciate all of you for hanging out, but guess what? We have the possibility of doing it next week because I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be here no matter what. 10:55 p.m. The show starts at 11 Eastern time. The time change and everything, including life, kind of got to me this week. So even though I'm here, this would normally be 1 o'clock in the morning, which is usually how long the show ran. So it's kind of like we lost an hour of the live stream. But with that being said, next week I'll be charged and in charge, ready to go, ready to rock and roll. So I will see everyone there. Once again, take care of yourselves, be good to each other, smile, and I will see you all next week. Oh, that's not working. Let's do this. Boom. And there we go. See you.